All right, so tonight we're going to talk about QBTarget. That's what everybody voted on and they wanted to learn about. So that's the QB core function, that functionality or script that we're going to be talking about tonight, talking about how to set it up, how it works, and how to use it. So the first thing I'll tell you, anytime that you're going to download a script that somebody else wrote, read the documentation. It's not always good. It's not always up to date, but it's very important that you read the documentation because it'll tell you some common things. So since we're going to talk about QBTarget tonight, I'm going to teach you how to do things right. We're going to go to QBTarget and we're going to open the README first. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but this is going to tell you about any dependencies you have. Polyzone is definitely a dependency because polyzones is what creates the area where the QBTarget works. So you have to have polyzone. They give you a link to it. QB core is optional, but yeah, if you're going to be attending my class, QB core and ESX aren't that much different. I don't know about all the other frameworks that are out there, but I've been doing QB core since I started, and so I don't feel like learning another language. And really, I don't have any problems with QB core. I think it's very straightforward. I think it works well. There's people out there that talk bad about QB core, but I've never had any issues with it. I think a lot of the scripts that they include, base scripts that they include, are functional. Some of them do need a little bit of repair work before they work. I don't remember which ones, but it gets better all the time. They do frequent updates. They recently did an inventory update. So yeah, they have quite a big dev team that works on it. So anyway, and then once you get done with the README, sometimes this will have installation instructions. It'll have information on things you need to do to load tables into your database. And so step one, anytime you download a script, is to read the README and see if there's anything special you need to know. It'll tell you if you need to like add any shared items to your QB core. It'll have a lot of information. So always do that first. And for QBTarget, there's actually templates. So you can take any of these templates and you can create targets for various scenarios. So the first one is like if you're going to just add a circle zone, that would be a circle poly zone in a particular coordinate that whenever you third eye it, it does things. And we're going to get into this in a lot of detail here in a minute because we're going to actually write a script. But the main thing I wanted to point out is that the key thing you can do to learn as quickly as possible and to be successful is to always read the documentation that's included. And that includes QB core. If you just get on the internet and search for QB core documentation, it'll take you to the QB core's wiki, essentially, that will have all the possible functions you can use. It'll tell you how to write a code for it. It'll tell you what it does and what the variables are, what you have to pass. So yeah, documentation is very important. Most people that write good scripts do a good job at doing the documentation. I hope I'm not boring you guys. I know this is very basic, but having a drink. Okay, let's see what's next. Always read documentation. Very important. Okay, let's talk about configs. So in QBTarget, it's kind of unique. Its config is called a init.lua. Sometimes you'll see a init.lua instead of config.lua. But this is where all the basic configuration for the script is located. So whenever you're writing your own config, which we'll do in a little bit, you always have to have config equals an empty table. A curly bracket is a table. So if you have an open curly and a closed curly, that means that there's going to be a table present. In this case, the script, you always at the top of your script as you move down, you have to create your variables before you use your variables. They have to be above in the lines of text. So the very first thing they do is create a variable called config, and it's empty. It means it's an empty table. So when you get a dot, think about this kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. So config is your workbook, max distance is your worksheet in this case. In this case, max distance only has one entry. So it would have basically in column 1, row A is a value of 7.0, and that's max distance. So that tells you how far you can be max away from an entity that you can interact with. The debug It's just if it's false, it doesn't show you the polyzones. If you set it to true, it'll show you all the polyzones in the server. You don't have to set that in the config. You can actually set it in your options whenever you're creating a target, which we'll talk about later. So these are pretty straightforward. So basically, like I said, config is the worksheet, standalone is the, config is the Excel, you know, file. Standalone would be your worksheet, and then that's the value. So that's pretty straightforward. You're going to see other ones where you have like config.circlezones, it's empty brackets and closed brackets. That means you can put a table in here. So the one table that I added before the class, just so that I could show you guys, is yoga. So you'll see all the underlined stuff. That's because instead of doing a get hash, you're entering this with, I don't remember what's that icon called? Just Lemon, do you know? It's the very top left button. It's like a hash mark or something. I don't know. It's below the tilde, so it's not shift. Anyway, it's like a slanty quote mark. You use that for whenever you're calling on FiveM to find models that are built in. It's like a hash. It's like that symbol tells it to look for a hash. And the problem is Lua doesn't like that symbol, and so it gives you a bunch of error stuff. So that's one thing that you have to watch out for. You don't have to worry about that. It's not a problem. It wants you to use quotes like here. But yeah, whenever you're calling a model, you're using some native stuff within FiveM. So you have to use that little hash symbol, and we'll talk about that later. But basically, let's talk about this. That one's confusing because it's all underlined. Let's talk about this one. So again, config, we're still in the same file essentially. If you're thinking about it like Excel, I'm an engineer, so Excel is something I'm very familiar with. I think most people are familiar with Excel. So if you were working in Excel, you would have a file called config. You would have a worksheet called global ped options. Inside that worksheet, you would have a segment or a section called target model. And inside target model, it would have a subtable that has models, and mod would be one of the models in that subtable. And if you have a comma, that means you can add more stuff. So you could keep adding additional models, and those would be contained within a table. And then inside that same one, you would have options would be another table, and you have a curly bracket here and here. So that means there's a subtable within there. So that means you can put brackets here and add an option. And then you could, after this comma, you could put another curly bracket and add another option. So basically what I'm saying is you could do this. And I don't have one to add right now, so I'll just copy this one and paste it here. And so that would be your next option. You could change this to whatever it wanted to be. And you can just keep doing that. You just have to add a comma every time. And basically what you're doing is you're creating a table with rows and columns, is the best way to think about it. And I should have whipped out, I have an old presentation that I did that talks specifically about config files, but you'll understand it more as we go along. But so for example, let's say that I wanted to reference this type right here. What would that look like in code? So I'm just going to type out some stuff here right now. So that variable, if I wanted to pull this variable like in a code, I would say, oh shit, wrong place. Let's go here. Okay, so wait a second. There we go. Okay, so you would have config dot global ped options dot. Well, actually, you can't do a dot because this is text, so it would be squares target model. And then you add a dot after that, and you go to options, and then dot type, and that would equal client. So if I was going to reference this value right here in my code, I can reference it, this variable. If I use this anywhere in the script, it's going to be the value client. If I change this to icon, then the answer would be this one. Now, what I'm not saying you have to add the equal. I'm just using that as demonstrative purposes. Like this is all you need, and that value would be recognized as this. Where it would be recognized as that wherever you do it. The equal sign in this case is just demonstrative to show you what this means. And if I stop here and I don't type anything else, then this value equals a table. It's this entire table. So that is what config.globalPedOptions is equal to. So if you want to do, we will talk about this later, if you wanted to do a loop or something, and you wanted to loop through all the various options that are within this table, that's the variable you would use to loop. If you do config global options, global ped options target model,
Suey. We can't hear you, Suey. Suey. My phone thinks I'm talking to her. Hang on. I think he's working on it.
hello?
Oh, there we go.
Jesus, how long has it been dead?
Not that long. Just at
Oh,
the
fuck.
very end of. Where was it, guys? The very end of the section you were just finishing up.
The configs? Did you hear
Yeah.
everything I said about configs and the variables and the table, the spreadsheet? You heard all that or no?
Go back a little bit. Let me see. Yes, Nick says.
Okay, Jesus. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah. Um, I don't know what happened there. That would have been great if you guys had just if I'd been talking for 30 minutes and it
No,
had been
no,
off the
no.
whole time. This is why this is why I have you guys backing me up. All right, so we're good. We're good. We're ready to go to the next one. Configs is good. Does anybody need me to answer any questions about configs if you missed anything?
Yeah. We probably missed altogether maybe 30 seconds, if
Okay,
that.
okay. Well,
Wasn't
that's
that
good.
much.
I was mostly rambling during the last 30 seconds, so we'll go on.
Yep. All right, you're good.
All right, let's set up. Let's see. What are we going to do? We're going to set up a prop target. We're going to set up a ped target. We're going to create a target at a specific location. We're going to create a ped target using exports, and then we're going to create a standalone script. Okay. So let me see here. I think I have. Let me open another folder here. Oh no. Okay, that's fine. We can just do it live. All right. So if you wanted to create there's simple ways in the init Lua to create the three targets I mentioned. Let me remember what they were. Ped target, prop target and the specific location target. So you can do that in the config file on QBTarget. So basically, if you want to set up a circle zone, you come here and you set it up. And if you want to know, oh, well, how do I do a circle zone? What all variables do I need? Well, that's why you go look at the templates. So you come look at the template, and we're going to look for circle zone. Do the tip that I told you about earlier. Okay, there's not a circle zone there, so let's look at an example. Okay, so here's what you need for a circle zone. This is for the config here. Nope, wait. Okay, so they don't have information on how to do a circle zone. That's interesting. But it'll be basically the same as a box zone. So let's go to the README, not the README, the what the templates. All right, box zone. All right. So if you wanted to add a box zone, you would use this section here, config option. This will go into the config box zones table. So you basically need to copy this, and you go back to the init Lua, and you get into box zones here, and you paste everything that I just copied there. So index, it doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want to. So we'll call it test. The name, we'll make it the same. I always make the name the same as the index, so it's easier to find. For chords, vector 3, you have to have 3 coordinates. You can get these, I'll show you how to get those later, but for this example, we'll just say 100, 100, 100. Now, whenever you're doing chords, this is an important thing. These are floats. They're not plain numbers, so you can't do 100 with no period. It has to be a float, so you have to have a decimal place. Anytime you're working with vectors, that's going to be something to always remember. It always has to be a float, so it always has to have a decimal place. It can be .0, but it has to have some sort of decimal, or it won't work. I mean, I'm not going to go through all these and just type because that's all I'm doing, but you can see especially for QBTarget, they give you all the information you need to build things. So the length of the box zone, since we're building a box zone, it's basically a polyzone that's shaped like a box. And this is the length of the box, this is the width of the box, this is the heading. So if you make a rectangle and you put a 0.0 heading, the rectangle would be centered on the chords that you enter, and uh, however long you said it was, let's say you said it was 10, and you set a width of 10, that wouldn't be a rectangle, would it? Let's say you set a width of 5, and you did a heading of 0.0. That's going to be a rectangle that's 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, and it is going straight north and south. So if you were standing at this chord with the polyzones on, you'd be standing in the middle of a box that was 10 meters long, 5 meters wide, and facing north and south. If you put 90, I mean, this is all just angles, right? So if you put 90, then the box would rotate 90 degrees. If you do 180, you wouldn't see any difference because it's a rectangle. It would just be a rectangle that was facing the opposite direction. Debug poly, if you set that to true, then it'll show you the polyzone. Min Z and max Z is the top and bottom, where the top and bottom of the rectangle would be able to be viewed from. So that's not a chord that shows. That's not a coordinate that places the box. It's just coordinates where you can see the box, because the box, if you have like 500 and 500, so yeah, it's the height of the box essentially. So you set the bottom chord for the height and the top chord for the height. Um, yeah, so basically there's a rectangle, it would go into infinity. This bounds the rectangle to the top and bottom. Options. The options are what you're going to see whenever you third eye the target. So The num is just where it appears. So if you have num equals 1, it's going to be the first option whenever you third eye. This only has one option. If you want to add more options, you do exactly what I told you earlier. You add a comma here, and you copy all of this and paste it there, and now you have two options. And so type will either be client or server. That tells QBTarget whether it's going to trigger a client event or a server event, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. Don't get worried if you don't know what that means. Event is the name of the function that it's going to trigger whenever you select the option in your third eye. FA example, this is going to be from, if you go to Font Awesome, you can find free icons, and any Font Awesome free icon you can use. You just have to identify it, like I think clipboard is one. And so that's the little icon that shows up in your third eye whenever you're looking at the target. Um, Label test, you can call it whatever you want, but that's what's going to that's going to be the what shows up. So like if you were wanting to buy, you would put buy there, or if you wanted to check stock or whatever. I mean, this is going to be what pops up in your third eye. So you're going to have the icon of a clipboard, and then beside the icon, it's going to say whatever. Like when you third eye the car and it says open trunk or whatever, that's where you put that as in label.
Suey,
Yes.
there's a question.
Okay.
Uh, Curry asks, so for a sorry, my phone. So a server like IRP, is every single target used in the server coded into the Inuit Lua.
No. No. I'm showing you how to do this because this is the most basic way to do it. But the way that we do it, almost 100% of the time, is by which I'm going to show you shortly. Whenever we start coding, is to use an export, because then you can put the because then the script where you can have the target, if you ever need to edit it or anything, you can go edit it in the script, so you don't have to scroll through um, a thousand configs. I'm just showing you this because when you're getting started, this is the easiest way to add QB targets. This is very straightforward, very descriptive, very simple. And so you can do this and you can add targets all over the place. But yeah, and I'm also using it as an example to walk through and talk about all the different options here. But no, and you'll see how we do it shortly. We're going to we're going to write a short, easy script, and I'm going to show you exactly how we do it and how we use exports. Thank you for the question. Um, so I said I wasn't going to go through all these, but I am going through all of them, so I apologize. But let's just keep going, because you have to, no matter how you do it, whether you do it with exports or you do it in the init.lua, you have to have all of these options that you want to use. So for item, any item you put here would be required in order for the third eye to show up. So if you have like a secret location that you have to have a key card for, you can put the name of the key card in this items, and if the player does not have that in their pockets, the third eye won't show up. Action. Uh, I don't use action. You can write a function for action, and that'll, instead of writing code, what I always do is I use type and event, and I just call the function that I wrote instead of putting a function inside the QB target creation. You can do it this way. Don't recommend it, um, because it's much easier and cleaner to keep it separate. Can interact is always going to be a function though, and you'll have a function in there that's checking if the, like for example, is pet a player. I don't know why you would have to ask that, because of course they're a player or they wouldn't be doing a QB target. But you can put stuff in here like if they're doing a task, for example, say you have a bank hacking script and they can't third eye the vaults until they've successfully hacked the computer. You would create a variable in your computer hack that would say that would be false, and as soon as they complete the hack, then it would change to true. And so in can interact, you would just reference that variable, and you would say, for example, if hack equals true, then hold on. If hack equals true, then return false. So yeah, you would say if hack equals false. And hack would be a variable, so it wouldn't be orange. But if hack equals false, then return false, then they wouldn't be able to see the third eye until the hack was true. So let's talk about this for a second real quick. So if you're saying if is, you use a double equal sign. Double equal sign means is. Um, return will exit whatever function you're in, and it'll return the value that follows it, and then it will end whenever you say end. So in this example, if the hack is false, then it's going to return false to QBTarget, and it's going to end. And if QBTarget gets a return of false, it's not going to give you a third eye option. So if your hack is true, then it's going to bypass this if, and it's going to go to return true, and QBTarget will know that you've completed the hack, and you'll be able to see the icons. So that's how can interact works. Job, you can put job police. I think you can do multiple jobs. Oh yeah, yeah. If you want to do multiple jobs, you have to turn it into a table. So if you wanted to do multiple jobs, you would add a curly bracket, and you could do like, I don't know, medic. You could do haze, whatever the jobs are. You can add them that way, and I think you have to put a bracket around them too. Let me check. Yeah, you have to put a bracket around them. So if you do a list like this, then you have to put a square bracket around each one, like so. And by the way, if you highlight in VS Code and just hit the square bracket, it'll open and close it. And I don't know why it's not happy. Why is that not happy? Gotta close. What? Oh, equals 0. Oh, because it's going to look for the grade that they have as well. So like you can set it up like if you wanted it to be a haze manager, you could put equals 5. And so then it would have to be a haze manager to open. And if you wanted to make it only accessible to gangs, you put that there. If you don't care about jobs or gangs, you have two options. You can either make this nil, and then anybody can access it, or you can just boop, because that's the same as nil. You can delete those and it'll be nil. Citizen ID is if you want only one specific player, like if you wanted to create an admin hangout room, which has never happened. We've never done that. But you wanted to have a secret room in a building that nobody else could access, you could just put in all the admin citizen IDs, and then they're the only ones that could go there, or whatever, players too, possibly. Draw distance is I don't know what that is. I've never used it. I'm not gonna lie to you. Says draw sprite is enabled. It's optional, so I've never used it. Draw color. This is going to determine what the color is of the text and everything that pops up. And I don't know what success draw is. I don't know what the difference is between draw color and success draw color. Never used either of those options, so I would just delete them. I'm sure they do something you could play with them and figure them out. All right. Okay, so that's as much as I'm going to talk about configs. Is there any questions before I go on to just actually writing a script?
No, you've been answering them along the way, so you're good.
There was only one question.
No, there was another one, but you answered it.
Oh, excellent. What the hell's going on here?